A young man walks through the dirt streets of a first-century Galilean village. He carries a heavy leather pouch of silver coins. He bought her freedom. Most people read the New Testament and see the word bridegroom scattered across the text. We look at the chaos of our circumstances and assume we have been left behind. But look at the ancient framework. The silence is not an abandonment. It is the sound of unseen construction. The bridegroom has not forgotten the heavy price he weighed out on the table. He is working with stone and cedar in a place you cannot currently see. You sit in the dark. You listen to the wind rattling the wooden shutters. You feel the cold clay of the floor against your bare feet. You wonder if the silver was actually enough. This is the hardest space in the ancient marriage model. It is the agonizing gap between the promise and the presence. The bride has to hold on to the memory of that fire-lit negotiation while living in a house that still feels exactly like her old life. You are living in the tension of the betrothal. You are holding the exact same posture as the first-century bride. And the most crucial instruction she has ever given is to keep oil in her lamp at all times. Because when the waiting finally shatters, it does not happen slowly. It does not happen predictably. And it does not happen in the bright, safe light of a Tuesday afternoon. It always happens at midnight. The air is freezing. The village is asleep. The wooden shutters are pulled tight against the wind. And then, a sound shatters. Jesus casually refers to himself as the bridegroom, while arguing with religious leaders who want him dead. It starts with the blast of a shofar, a ram's horn cutting violently through the cold air. Then come the voices loud, frantic, echoing off narrow walls. Suddenly, the dark streets are entirely illuminated. Torches flare up. The smell of burning pitch and hot olive oil fills the alleyways. The bridegroom comes. When Jesus tells the parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew 25, he is describing a standard Tuesday night in Galilee. Most feel intense, looming anxiety. Look at the arrival itself. The shout in the dark is not a warning of invasion. It is the announcement of a rescue. Breaking the night. The bride grabs her clay lamp. Her wick is trimmed. Her oil is burning. She steps out of the door of her father's house for last time. The procession sweeps her up. They run, dancing, shouting, river of fire, moving through the ancient landscape. She is surrounded by singing and great joy. But the journey from the bride's empty room back to the father's prepared house is not free. To understand the midnight rescue, look at the cross. When you look at the crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth through a purely Western, modern lens, it is easy to reduce the scene to a sterile theological equation of sin and punishment. We see a Roman execution, and we talk about atonement, propitiation, and divine wrath. But if you look at the hill of Golgotha, John the Baptist calls himself the friend of the bridegroom, standing waist-deep in the Jordan River, through the ancient cultural lens of the Galilean marriage covenant. The entire landscape of the cross shifts. The crucifixion is not a tragedy the bridegroom failed to escape. It is the mohar he intentionally paid. Remember, the fundamental requirement of the ancient betrothal. The CHATAN must prove that he is willing to completely deplete his own resources to secure the freedom and the future of his bride. The covenant cannot be established with empty promises. It requires a physical, crushing cost to transfer her out of her former household and into his. When the Roman soldiers lay the heavy wooden crossbeam in the dirt, the theological abstractions end. When the iron spikes are driven through human flesh, the abstract concept of divine love becomes a legally binding, physical reality. The blood pooling on the limestone is not just the tragic result of a political execution, it is the literal, physical currency of the blood alliance that was promised in the upper room, when he pushed the cup of dark wine across the table. The Apostle Paul understands this legal framework perfectly. Paul tells a fractured, bleeding church in Corinth that he has betrothed them to one husband. Most people assume this is just a poetic metaphor. When he writes to the church in Colossae, he tells them that God took the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands, and he set it aside, nailing it to the cross. Paul uses the Greek word cheirographon, a handwritten certificate of debt. In the ancient world, When a staggering financial debt was finally settled, the magistrate would stamp the papyrus document with a single word, tetelestai, paid in full. When Jesus pulls himself up on the iron nails to take one final, agonizing breath, that is the exact word he shouts into the darkened Judean sky, tetelestai. He is not merely saying that his physical suffering is over. He is making a binding legal declaration that the mohar has been weighed out and accepted. The bride price has been paid in full. The debt that held the bride in slavery to a different master has been completely canceled. The cross is not a symbol of defeat. It is the receipt of purchase. But this creates a massive narrative problem. The bridegroom has successfully paid the mohar to secure the bride. But a dead man cannot build a chamber. A dead man cannot prepare a place. A dead man cannot run through the streets at midnight with torches and a shout to wake the village. A soft, romantic image meant to illustrate how much God loves humanity, wrapped up in the cultural wedding language of the day. For the ancient betrothal pattern to hold, the grave cannot be a final resting place. It has to be something else entirely. The limestone tomb is completely dark. The garden outside is perfectly still. The air smells of crushed myrrh, bitter aloes, and cold rock. The body is bound tightly in strips of heavy linen. Then, breath fills the lungs. The eyes open in the pitch black. The linen is unwound. The burial cloth is folded and left on the stone slab. The grave is not a final resting place. It is a doorway. He steps out into the cool morning air. The ground is covered in dew. He walks out of the garden. A dead man cannot prepare a chamber. A dead man cannot pour the wine. A dead man cannot return for his bride at midnight. So the CHATAN refuses to stay dead. He finds his friends hiding behind locked doors. He eats roasted fish by the Sea of Galilee. He shows them his hands. He shows them the physical, permanent scars where the iron paid the mohar. He stays for 40 days. And then, exactly as he promised, in the upper room, he leaves. He ascends. He returns to his father's estate. He takes up the wood. He takes up the stone. He begins the construction of the chuppah, and the long wait begins. The bride sits in the house. The world around her continues. But if you look closer at the harsh, economic reality of a first-century Galilean wedding, at the ancient Hebrew vocabulary that anchors the entire concept as if the contract was never signed, the empires rise. The empires fall. The centuries turn over. The mockers stand outside her window and laugh at the empty room. They point to the silence. They point to the delay. They ask where this supposed bridegroom is. She does not argue. She trims her wick. She pours the oil. She keeps the lamp burning. Because across the chasm of time, in a place she cannot see, the construction is finishing. Picture the scene on the father's estate. The heavy cedar beams are set in place. The stone walls are perfectly squared. The chamber is ready. The father walks through the finished rooms. He inspects the work. He turns to the son, who bears the scars of the bride price. The father nods his head. The father gives the command. The ram's horn sounds. It cuts violently through the silence of history. The bridegroom grabs a torch. The groomsmen shout. They run out into the dark. He is coming back. He is not coming as a bleeding sacrifice. He is not coming as a quiet teacher to argue with scholars in a temple courtyard. He is coming with fire. He is coming with a shout designed to wake the dead. He is tearing through the midnight sky to reclaim the woman he purchased with his own blood. The waiting room is about to shatter. The door is about to swing wide open. In Blood and Sacrifice, you start to see something the romantic reading completely misses. The title of bridegroom is not just a symbol of affection. A father chose a bride in the dust of Galilee, and a rescue mission was put into motion. A young man pushed a cup of dark wine across a table, and a legal promise was forged. A mountain covered in fire became a canopy, and a fractured people found a covering. A bride sat in the agonizing silence of a dark room, and a stone chamber was quietly built. A heavy price of silver was replaced by iron spikes, and a certificate of debt was canceled forever. A dead man walked out of a sealed limestone tomb, and a final doorway was forced wide open, A shout will shatter the midnight sky, and a waiting woman will finally be brought home. One thread, one story. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the cup. Not just a religious ritual in a sanctuary. A Galilean man in an upper room, looking across a table at terrified fishermen. Knowing the exact physical, crushing cost of the mohar, he was about to pay in his own veins and pushing the wine forward anyway. He did not blink at the price of your life. It is the declaration of a rescue mission. To feel the absolute weight of what Jesus is claiming every time he adopts this title. If you are in a season where the silence of God is deafening, where the house feels empty and the dark is closing in, do not misread the delay. The waiting is not an abandonment. The quiet is not a rejection. You are simply in the betrothal. The CHATAN has not forgotten the blood he weighed out for you on Golgotha. Trim your wick. Pour the oil. Keep the lamp burning. And may the God who has never once broken a blood covenant hold you steady in the midnight wait, until you hear his voice in the dark. If this reached something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment, even one word helps. Share this with someone who feels like they have been left behind in the waiting room. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. You have to step into the dust of that ancient betrothal. You have to watch what actually happens long before the wedding canopy is ever raised. The father chooses the bride. The son travels across the country to her house. The negotiation is settled. The price is weighed out in silver, a clay skin of dark wine, and a rolled contract written on coarse parchment. The sun is setting, casting long shadows against the limestone houses. But the detail that changes how you read every mention of the bridegroom in the Gospels is what happens next. The part of the ancient ceremony that the modern world has entirely forgotten, hiding in a single ancient Hebrew word. When you open the ancient Hebrew texts, the concept of marriage is woven through almost every book, but it is never framed as a search for a soulmate. Look at Exodus chapter 4. Moses is traveling back to Egypt, and in a bizarre, violent encounter in the wilderness, his wife Zipporah cuts off her son's foreskin with a sharp piece of flint. She touches the bloody stone to Moses' feet, and she calls him a bridegroom of blood. It is a jarring, confusing scene that makes modern readers profoundly uncomfortable. The word she throws at Moses in the dust of the Sinai Peninsula is the Hebrew word CHATAN. In most of your English Bibles, it is simply translated as bridegroom or husband. But CHATAN is rooted in an ancient reality that completely predates our modern understanding of weddings. The ancient Semitic root of the word carries the meaning to circumcise, or more broadly, to protect, to join, and to make an alliance by blood. A CHATAN in the ancient Near East. He is not going to buy a field. He is not going to trade goods in the marketplace. Was not merely a man standing under a decorative canopy waiting for a ceremony to begin. He was the initiator. He was the one stepping into a binding covenant that inherently required the shedding of blood to fuse two distinct families into one legal entity. This blood alliance was legally established through a heavy, physical cost called the mohar. In Genesis 34, when a local prince negotiates for Jacob's daughter, he tells her father and brothers, "Ask me ever so much mohar and gift, and I will give whatever you say to me." The mohar is the bride price. But we have to be extremely careful with that English translation, because the modern mind immediately jumps to human trafficking. The mohar was not a commercial transaction where a woman was purchased like a piece of livestock or a tract of land. In the ancient legal framework, the mohar was the compensation paid to the bride's family for the permanent loss of her labor, her presence, and her future children. It was a staggering financial sacrifice. A man would often work for years just as Jacob worked 7 long years in the hot Mesopotamian sun for Rachel, his hands calloused from the herds to accumulate enough wealth to pay the mohar. It was the ultimate proof that the CHATAN was capable of sacrificing his own comfort and his own resources to secure the life of his bride. He is walking to a house at the edge of town to purchase a life. You can hear the heavy knocking on a thick wooden door. That ancient root changes everything. When Jesus walks onto the stage in the 1st century, looking at a crowd of skeptics and religious scholars, and casually claims this title for himself, He is pulling on a thread that stretches all the way back to the flint knife in the desert. He is not borrowing a cultural metaphor to sound accessible to a peasant crowd. The bridegroom is not a symbol of divine romance. It is the title of the blood covenant maker. And the exact moment that price is agreed upon, the entire covenant is sealed with a single, physical act. The clay cup slides across the rough wood. Dark wine settles at the brim. The two fathers stop talking. The fire crackles in the hearth. The room goes completely silent. The young man holds his breath. This is the absolute climax of a first-century Galilean betrothal. The mohar has been weighed out in silver. The contract has been written on parchment. The terms have been fiercely negotiated. But the covenant cannot be forced by the fathers alone. The bridegroom pours a cup of wine and pushes it across the table toward the young woman. It is the cup of acceptance. If she pushes it back, the negotiation is dead. If she walks away, the silver returns to the pouch. The quiet, intense murmurs of negotiation between two fathers across a low, fire-lit table. The smell of burning olive oil. If she lifts the cup to her lips and drinks, her life is bound to his. She lifts the clay. She tastes the crushed grapes. The families cheer in the firelight. The betrothal is legally sealed. Now, shift your eyes to a different room. Just a few decades later, it is a Thursday night in Jerusalem. The air in the upper room is thick with the smell of roasted lamb and bitter herbs. 13 men recline on cushions around a low table. The city outside is tense, swarming with Roman soldiers and religious pilgrims. Inside, a teacher takes a cup of dark wine. He looks at the men sitting in the flickering lamplight. Every single man in that room grew up in the rural villages of Galilee. They have attended the local betrothals. They have seen the silver weighed out. They know the exact cultural weight of what happens when a man pushes a cup of wine across a table and asks you to drink. Jesus slides the cup forward. He says the words recorded in Luke chapter 22, "This cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood." The Last Supper is not just a Passover meal. It is a marriage proposal. Jesus is not instituting a religious ritual for a future church to perform in a sanctuary. He is acting as the CHATAN, and crushed grapes hanging in the warm evening air. This is a betrothal in ancient Israel. It is loud. It is legal. It is binding. He is offering the cup of the covenant. He is explicitly announcing the mohar. He is telling these fishermen and tax collectors that the bride price will not be weighed out in Roman coins from a leather pouch. It will be weighed out in his own veins. The cost of this blood alliance will be paid on a wooden beam, under a darkened sky, on a skull-shaped hill outside the city gates. He offers the cup. They take it. They drink the wine. The covenant is cut in the upper room. But in the ancient marriage tradition, the ceremony does not end at the table. The moment the cup is empty, the bridegroom makes a specific promise. Then he stands up, turns his back on his new bride, and walks out the door. He must leave her behind. And what he goes to build changes the meaning of a mountain that defined the history of Israel. The betrothal is signed in wine in the upper room. The bride is legally secured by the blood covenant, but the CHATAN cannot take his new wife home on the night of the betrothal, because the home does not actually exist yet. In the first-century Jewish wedding customs, the groom must leave his bride and return to his father's estate. We are a culture that views marriage through the lens of individual choice and romantic feeling. A ring. A question. Yes? His singular task for the next year is to construct an addition to his family's courtyard, building the chuppah, the bridal chamber where they will eventually live. He hauls the heavy limestone, mixes the mortar, and cuts the rough cedar beams to prepare a place for her. This is why Jesus, just moments after offering the cup of the covenant in the upper room, looks at his disciples in John chapter 14 and tells them he is leaving. He says, "In my Father's house are many rooms. I am going there to prepare a place for you." He is not speaking in abstract spiritual metaphors about floating on clouds in an ethereal heaven. He is speaking the exact, legally binding language of a Galilean bridegroom, explaining why he has to walk out the door. If seeing the ancient Jewish framework beneath these familiar verses is shifting something in how you read the Bible, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week, we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the ancient bridegroom goes to work with wood and stone. But this pattern of a bridegroom establishing a covenant and then preparing a canopy does not start in the 1st century, but in the ancient Near East. A betrothal was a matter of survival. It was a transfer of authority, a merging of bloodlines. It is the defining architectural structure of the Old Testament itself. When Jewish rabbis and scholars read the story of the Exodus, they do not read it as a sterile historical account of a migration. They read the entire book of Exodus as a sweeping, dramatic marriage ceremony between God and the nation of Israel. When Moses leads the people to the base of Mount Sinai in the desert, the mountain is covered in thick, dark smoke and fire. In the ancient rabbinic tradition, that physical cloud resting over the granite peak is viewed as the ultimate huppah, the divine wedding canopy stretched out over the bride. And the heavy stone tablets that Moses carries down the mountain are not viewed as a list of arbitrary restrictions handed down by an angry dictator. The Torah is understood as the ketubah, the formal marriage contract, that outlines exactly how this newly forged household will function, how the bride is to be protected, and how the two will live together in fidelity. Sinai is not a courtroom. It is a wedding canopy. God is acting as the CHATAN, legally binding himself to a fractured, traumatized people who have known nothing but the mud and the whip of Egypt, drawing them under his protective covering. But building the chamber and drafting the contract is only half of the ancient process. The real tension, a covenant sealed not just with whispered vows, but with a price that could drain a family's entire wealth. The bridegroom did not just court his bride. Of the Galilean marriage model is what happens back at the bride's house and the brutal psychological reality of how long that wait is supposed to last. You watch the sun go down. You trim the wick on a clay lamp. You pour a little more olive oil. You wait. You do this every single night. That is the brutal reality for the Galilean bride. The contract is signed, but the house is empty. Months pass in total silence. The summer heat bakes the ground. The winter rains turn the roads to deep, impassable mud. She does not know the day. She does not know the hour. Only the father of the groom determines when the stone chamber is finally ready. If you have walked with God for any length of time, you know this exact room. You know the suffocating silence of the betrothal period. You pray a desperate prayer and hear absolutely nothing back. You read an ancient promise and see zero evidence of it in your daily life. You hold on to the cup of the covenant, but the chair across from you feels terrifyingly empty. The waiting stretches your nerves to the breaking point. The delay tests your memory of the wine. We live in a culture of instant access. When we send a message, we expect 3 dots to appear immediately. When God goes quiet, our modern minds panic. We assume the contract is broken. We assume the delay means the groom has found someone else.